Welcome to the Deep Dive. This is where we take the sources you send us, dive in deep, and pull out those key insights. You've done the reading, and we're here to help unpack it all, maybe find a few interesting connections along the way.
And today, you've given us a really fascinating one. It's a review article, hot off the press, from August 2024 in Educational Psychology Review. It's called Control Value Theory, From Achievement Emotion to a General Theory of Human Emotions.
Right. So get ready. We're diving into something pretty fundamental about, well, how we feel things.
Yeah.
Our mission today. To really understand this control value theory, or CVT.
Yeah, the idea is to see how our emotions are really deeply connected to our sense of control over situations, and just as importantly, how much we value those situations or their outcomes.
And this isn't just about, say, feeling anxious before a test or happy when you succeed. The source makes it clear this framework is much bigger.
Absolutely. It's largely the work of Reinhard Pekrun, who's a major figure in educational psychology. And his work suggests this control value idea helps explain not just academic feelings, but how we feel about learning in general, our social lives, maybe even our existence. It's broad.
Okay, so where do we start? The article kicks off by pointing out something maybe a little surprising. For a long time, researchers looking at learning or even work in sports, well, emotions weren't really front and center.
Right. It seems odd now, doesn't it? Because anyone who's ever learned anything or taught anything knows feelings are a huge part of it.
Definitely. I mean, think about getting frustrated or that buzz when you finally get something.
Exactly. The article mentions there were early studies, sure, things like test anxiety or how we explain why we succeeded or failed, attributions, they call it, but a really systematic look at emotions. It was kind of missing in those achievement contexts.
But that landscape has shifted. The article talks about an effective turn. Suddenly there's this explosion of research on emotions and achievement.
Yeah, lots of meta-analyses pulling things together, showing real growth in the area. And CVT is positioned right in the middle of this shift. It's not totally new, but it integrates and expands on those earlier ideas.
It connects the dots.
Precisely. This effective turn, it's a sign that researchers across different fields are realizing, hey, emotions aren't just fluff, they're fundamental to how we think, how we act. And Pekrun's work with CVT was specifically aimed at bringing those fragmented pieces together, test anxiety research, attribution theories, even models of stress.
And a key part of that was bridging this gap between emotion researchers and motivation researchers. Because apparently there was a lot of what the article calls conceptual jingle jangle.
Yeah, jingle jangle. Basically, people using the same terms for different concepts or different terms for the same concept makes it really hard to build knowledge collectively.
Like motivation meaning wanting to learn versus wanting good grades, but not being clear which one.
Exactly like that. Or emotion folks talking about appraisals, while motivation folks talk about expectancies, even when they might be getting at similar ideas about how we evaluate situations. You need a common language.
So Pekrun started laying the groundwork before the full CVT. There was GXVAM, Generalized Expectancy Value Theory of Motivation, and EVTA, the Expectancy Value Theory of Anxiety. Let's take GXVAM first.
Okay. GXM was really about breaking down our expectations. It wasn't just, do I think I'll succeed? It was more detailed.
How so?
Well, first, there's action control expectancy. That's basically, do I think I can even start and carry out this action? It's like self-efficacy, feeling capable, but maybe broader, less focused only on successful completion.
Okay, you gotta do it. What else?
Then action outcome expectancies. If I do this action, will it lead to the result I want?
Right. Does my action cause the outcome?
And third, situation outcome expectancies. This is about external factors. Will this outcome happen anyway because of the situation, regardless of what I do?
So things outside my control.
Exactly. GXVAM said our overall expectation comes from combining these three. It shows how our sense of agency mixes with our perception of external forces. A really neat breakdown.
Makes sense. And GXVAM also looked at value, right? Like why we care.
Yes, distinguishing between intrinsic value, enjoying the activity itself, and extrinsic value, doing it for some external reward or outcome.
And both could be positive or negative.
Yeah, intrinsic positive. Finding studying genuinely interesting. Extrinsic positive. Studying leads to praise or a good job. Intrinsic negative. Finding the task itself boring or effortful. Extrinsic negative. Studying to avoid failing or facing penalties. It maps out our motivations in more detail.
So that was GXVAM. Then EVTA focused specifically on anxiety.
Right. Expectancy value theory of anxiety. It took those GXVAM ideas and applied them to future negative events like failing an exam.
So anxiety comes from expecting something bad.
And seeing that bad outcome as highly undesirable, highly negative in value, both are needed. If you expect to fail but don't really care, you might not feel anxious.
And it links back to those expectancies, like feeling you can't prevent the bad outcome.
Exactly. Do you feel the bad outcome will happen no matter what? Situation outcome. Or feel you can't take the right action to stop it? Action control. Or maybe even feel your actions will cause it? Action outcome. Any of those, combined with high negative value, can fuel anxiety.
The article mentions an interesting point about likelihood and anxiety. It's not linear.
That's a key insight from EVTA. Yes, as the likelihood of a negative event goes up, anxiety tends to increase, but only up to a point. If failure feels almost certain and unavoidable,
Then what?
anxiety might actually decrease, replaced by hopelessness. Anxiety seems to thrive when there's still some uncertainty, some perceived, even if slight, chance to avoid the negative outcome. Once it feels totally inevitable, the emotion shifts.
Wow. Okay, and social environments matter here too.
Definitely. EVTA noted that environments with high demands, unclear expectations, or severe consequences for failure can really ramp up anxiety by influencing those expectancies and values.
Got it. And before the full CVT, there was one more piece. The cognitive motivational model of emotion effects.
Right. This was important because it added another dimension beyond just positive or negative. It looked at arousal. Is the emotion activating, energizing, or deactivating, draining?
So like excitement is positive and activating, relief might be positive but deactivating, anxiety is negative and activating, boredom is negative and deactivating.
Pretty much. And the model proposed these different types affect things like attention, motivation, thinking styles in different ways. Just knowing positive or negative wasn't enough. That later got folded into CVT.
Okay, so that sets the stage. Around 2000, the first version of CVT emerges. What was the big step forward then?
It broadened the scope beyond just future-oriented anxiety. It started explaining emotions we feel while doing something, activity emotions, and emotions about things that already happened, retrospective emotions.
And the key concepts were?
Control became this central umbrella term. It covered future expectancies, retrospective explanations, attributions, and current feelings of competence. And value remained crucial for all these emotions. It linked the past, present, and future through this lens of control and value.
Then from 2006 onwards, we get the full-blown CVT of achievement emotions.
Yeah.
This focuses specifically on feelings related to competence, right? Meeting standards.
Exactly. And a major contribution here was the taxonomy, a way to classify these emotions.
How did it classify them?
3 dimensions. First, the object focus is the emotion about the activity itself, like studying, or the outcome, like the exam grade.
Okay, activity versus outcome.
Second, valence. Is it positive or negative?
Good or bad feeling.
And third, arousal. Is it activating or deactivating? Energizing or draining?
Activity outcome, positive, negative, activating, deactivating. That gives you a grid.
Precisely. The article has a table showing examples: enjoyment, positive, activating, activity-focused; boredom, negative, deactivating, activity-focused; hope, positive, activating, outcome-focused; anxiety, negative, activating, outcome-focused; pride, positive, activating, outcome-focused, retrospective; shame, negative, often deactivating, outcome-focused, retrospective; anger, hopelessness. It covers a lot.
And it even added a new one. Assurance.
Yeah, conceptualized as a feeling of certainty about future success, distinct from hope, which involves more uncertainty.
And the core idea linking all these.
Still control and value. The interplay between your perceived control and the perceived value of the activity or outcome is what generates the specific emotion.
So for emotions during an activity, like enjoyment or boredom,
It's about your perceived competence at the activity and the value you place on the activity. Feel competent and find it interesting. Enjoyment. Don't see the value. Boredom, even if you feel competent.
what about anger during an activity? The theory changed on that one.
It did. Initially, Pekron thought anger came from feeling blocked despite having control, but empirical research didn't quite support that.
So what's the current understanding?
Anger during activities seems linked to a lack of controllable control over something you value highly. Think getting stuck in traffic when you have to be somewhere, or your computer freezing right before a deadline. It's that feeling of impotence combined with high stakes.
Okay, that makes more sense. And for emotions about future outcomes, hope, anxiety.
That links back to your expectancy of success or failure, which is tied to control, and the value of that outcome. Hope and anxiety are strongest under uncertainty. High chance of success plus high value hope or anticipatory joy. High chance of failure plus high value anxiety.
And if it feels certain,
Certain success might lead to assurance or prospective joy. Certain failure leads to hopelessness.
And retrospective emotions like pride and shame after the fact.
They involve control, did I succeed, fail, and value, did I care, but also causal attributions. Why did it happen? Did I cause it, internal attribution, or was it something else, external attribution?
How is that different from earlier attribution theories, like Wiener's?
CVT integrates the attribution part more directly with the control and value appraisals. It sees them working together, whereas Wiener's model focused more centrally on the attribution itself as the primary driver after an outcome. CVT emphasizes the ongoing interplay.
And there's research backing this up with more refined methods.
Yes, the article stresses that. Studies started differentiating types of value, testing how control and value interact, not just their separate effects, and using designs that try to get closer to showing cause and effect. The theory evolved based on evidence.
Okay, so let's talk implications. One big one seems to be domain specificity. Emotions aren't general. They're tied to specific subjects or areas.
That's a key point. Because your sense of control, like your academic self-concept, and your interests, value, tend to be different for different subjects, say, math versus art. Your emotions in those subjects are likely different too.
You might love math and feel confident, leading to enjoyment, but feel anxious about writing essays.
Exactly. Research finds surprisingly low correlations between emotions across domains like math and language. The practical takeaway for, say, teachers is crucial. You need to assess and address emotions within each specific subject. Don't assume a happy student in one class feels the same in another.
It makes sense. What about individual factors influencing these emotions?
CVT highlights several. Your past performance obviously impacts your sense of control. Success usually boosts it. Failure undermines it. Your achievement goals matter too.
How so?
Well, if you have mastery goals you want to really understand and learn, you'll likely focus more on your competence and the value of the activity itself. That might lead to more enjoyment, maybe some frustration if you get stuck.
Versus performance goals? Just wanting to look good or get the grade.
Right. Then you might focus more on the controllability and value of the outcome. This could lead to more hope or anxiety, maybe pride or shame, depending on the result. Mindset growth versus fixed also influences how you interpret challenges and setbacks, affecting control appraisals.
In stereotypes.
Yeah. Things like gender stereotypes about math ability can subtly influence a student's perceived control and value for math, and thus their emotions, even if their actual ability is high.
So individual factors shape the control value lens. What about social factors, the environment?
Hugely important. The article points to a figure showing multiple influences. Things like the quality of instruction. Is it clear? Are tasks appropriately difficult? Does it spark curiosity?
Okay, clarity and challenge.
Also, the emotional and motivational quality of the environment. Is the teacher enthusiastic? Do they convey the value of the material? Is there autonomy support? Do students feel they have some choice? Is there a sense of belonging, relatedness?
Teacher enthusiasm, value, choice, belonging. What else?
Social expectations and goal structures in the classroom. Is it competitive or collaborative? The type of feedback given, is it informational, helping you learn, or just judgmental? Is there an error culture where mistakes are seen as learning opportunities?
Feedback in classroom culture. Makes sense.
And even the composition of the group. This relates to the happy fish little pond effect.
Ah, right. Being a strong student in an average group feels better than being an equally strong student in a super high-achieving group.
Basically, yes. Your relative standing affects your self-perception of competence, your control appraisal, even if your absolute performance is the same. Research supports this effect.
And these social factors influence emotions through shaping those control and value appraisals.
That's the mechanism proposed by CVT. The environment changes how you perceive your control and how much you value things, which then triggers the emotions. And this extends beyond the classroom. Think family environment, institutional policies, even broader cultural values and stereotypes.
Okay, so CVT explains where emotions come from. What about their effects on learning, achievement, health?
Right. The theory also looks downstream. It builds on that cognitive motivational model we mentioned. Different emotions, positive activating, negative deactivating, etc., have different impacts.
Oh.
They can affect cognitive resources like working memory capacity. They influence motivation approach or avoidance tendencies. They shape thinking styles, flexible and creative versus narrow and rigid. And the object focus matters too.
Meaning whether the emotion is about the task or the outcome.
Yeah. For instance, enjoyment derived from the learning activity itself might boost deep learning strategies more than, say, anticipatory joy focused solely on getting a good grade later.
And is there evidence for these effects?
Lots. Meta-analyses consistently link test anxiety to lower achievement. But research also shows links for other emotions, enjoyment, hope, pride correlating positively with achievement, while boredom, anger, hopelessness correlate negatively.
You mentioned something about newer research suggesting an even stronger link.
Yes, recent studies using within-person analysis tracking individuals over time suggest that the fluctuations in a student's emotions are quite strongly related to fluctuations in their performance, perhaps more strongly than earlier studies suggested. Hope and hopelessness seem particularly predictive of academic trajectories.
And it goes beyond grades, impacting health too.
Definitely. The article argues we should perhaps consider intense, chronic negative achievement emotions like debilitating anxiety or pervasive shame as potential mental health issues.
That's a strong statement.
It is, but it highlights the potential severity. And there's evidence linking negative emotions where perceived control is low anxiety, shame, hopelessness to poorer physical health outcomes through stress pathways. These emotions can impact stress hormone regulation like cortisol levels, immune function, sleep quality, the things that have knock-on effects on physical health.
There.
There are empirical findings supporting these links.
So it's not just about feeling bad. It can actually make you unwell.
That seems to be the case.
CVT also talks about reciprocal causation, things influencing each other back and forth.
Right. It's not just antecedents control value, emotions, outcomes. Emotions can feed back and influence appraisals and even the environment. Feeling anxious might make you perceive less control next time. A classroom full of bored students creates a different climate. It's dynamic.
Which leads to emotion regulation. How does CVT view that?
It proposes 5 main families of strategies, building on but also adapting models like Gross's. There's changing the emotion directly, for example, relaxation, changing the situation, for example, leaving, changing appraisals, rethinking control value, shifting attention, distraction, and crucially, changing competence.
Changing competence. How is that emotion regulation?
By improving your skills or knowledge related to the task, you directly address the source of many negative achievement emotions, namely, perceived lack of control. If you get better at something, you're likely to feel less anxious or frustrated about it. CVT highlights this competence-oriented regulation as particularly adaptive in achievement settings.
Gotcha. And the final piece for achievement emotions was relative universality.
Yeah, the idea that while the specifics might vary across cultures, what triggers pride, how anxiety is expressed, the basic functional mechanisms linking control, value, emotions, antecedents, and outcomes are likely common across humans.
And there's evidence for this from cross-cultural studies.
Yes, the article mentions large-scale studies like PISA, which collect data across many countries. While there are cultural differences in average emotion levels, the relationships between variables like control predicting enjoyment or anxiety predicting lower performance tend to show similar patterns across diverse cultures, supporting this idea of relative universality.
Okay, that covers the achievement emotion part thoroughly.
Mhm.
But then the theory got generalized.
Exactly. Pequon and colleagues realized these core ideas of control and value might apply much more broadly. The goal was to move towards a more general theory of human emotions, especially those relevant beyond pure achievement, like epistemic, social, and existential emotions. And, importantly, to overcome that fragmentation we talked about earlier.
So, applying control and value to other types of feelings. Let's start with epistemic emotions, feelings about knowledge and understanding.
Right. Think surprise, curiosity, confusion. Surprise is seen as retrospective, triggered when an outcome violates your expectation. Didn't see that coming.
Okay, what about curiosity?
Curiosity is perspective. CVT suggests it arises from a mix. You perceive some incongruity or gap in your knowledge, like cognitive dissonance. You feel you have the control to potentially close that gap or resolve the incongruity, and you value knowing the answer or resolving it.
Control and value again. Does that connect to other ideas about curiosity?
Yes, it aligns well with Lowenstein's information gap theory, for example. Curiosity is often strongest when the gap feels manageable, not overwhelmingly large, and when you care about the topic, moderate incongruity seems key.
And confusion.
Confusion arises from incongruity too, but here the interaction with control is negative. You perceive conflicting information, you value understanding it, but you feel you lack the control or ability to resolve the contradiction or make sense of it.
That feeling of being stuck and not knowing how to proceed.
Exactly. And the theory suggests if confusion persists unresolved, it can morph into frustration or boredom. But if you do resolve it, that can lead to satisfaction or even delight.
Okay, those are epistemic.
Mm.
Then social emotions, self versus other.
Right. Self-related ones first. Pride, shame, guilt. CVT links these strongly to the perceived value of your attributes, actions, or outcomes. And crucially, for emotions about actions and outcomes, they depend on internal causal attributions feeling you had control or responsibility.
So pride comes from valuing a positive outcome you feel responsible for.
Yes. Shame from valuing a negative outcome you feel responsible for. Guilt also involves perceived control over a negatively valued action or its consequences. Control is central.
What about emotions towards others? Love, gratitude, anger, admiration.
It's more varied here. Some, like maybe basic forms of love or hate, might be primarily driven by the value placed on the person or a relationship. But many others involve control appraisals, often about the other person.
Like gratitude and anger.
Yeah. Gratitude often involves valuing a positive outcome and attributing it to another person's controllable, intentional action. Anger towards someone often involves a negative outcome attributed to their controllable action or inaction. It's about their perceived control.
And admiration, contempt, compassion, envy.
These often involve social comparison, but control appraisals can still play a role. Admiration might involve valuing someone's positive attributes or outcomes and perhaps seeing them as achieved through their control or effort. Contempt might involve negative value and attributing the cause to the person's controllable flaws. Compassion involves valuing another's well-being when they suffer from things often seen as outside their control. Envy involves valuing something another has and may involve complex appraisals about deservingness and control. The point is, control appraisals, whether about self or other, are often involved alongside value.
Okay, so control and value are still relevant, just maybe applied differently.
Yeah.
Finally, existential emotions.
About life?
Health, death.
Right. These relate to our fundamental existence. A key difference from achievement emotions, CVT suggests, is the critical role of situation, outcome, expectancy beliefs about what will happen due to external forces, not just our own actions.
Because our health isn't entirely up to us.
Exactly. And all these emotions, hope for recovery, anxiety about illness, joy at being alive, hopelessness facing mortality, depend fundamentally on the immense value we place on health, life, and avoiding illness and death.
And control still plays a part.
Yes, especially for perspective emotions like hope and anxiety about health. These depend on our perceived control related to preventing illness or promoting health, including situation outcome expectancies, genetic risks, action control, can I stick to a diet, and action outcome, will this treatment work? It's that interplay of perceived control over valued existential outcomes.
And the theory suggests that other aspects like distal antecedents, effects on behavior, reciprocal causation, regulation strategies, these also extend to epistemic, social, and existential emotions.
That's the argument for the generalized theory. The same basic framework applies, though the specifics will differ depending on the emotion domain. It provides a unifying lens.
Which brings us back to practical implications, especially for education. How can this be used? Assessment is one area.
Yes. Because CVT provides a detailed model, researchers have been able to develop specific questionnaires. The Achievement Emotions Questionnaire, or AEQ, and its variations for different ages and subjects is widely used. And the Epistemic Emotion Scales, EES, measure things like curiosity and confusion.
And these aren't just for researchers.
No, they can be used by educators too to get a better sense of the emotional landscape in their classrooms. And versions have even been included in large international assessments like PISA, which shows their perceived importance.
Beyond assessment, how does CVT help educators understand emotions better? The article listed 5 key messages.
Right, 5 evidence-based takeaways for teachers. 1, student emotions vary by subject, task, situation. They aren't fixed traits.
Okay, variability. 2,
Self-confidence, control, and valuing learning are key drivers of positive emotions. Lack of confidence and focusing only on extrinsic outcomes often fuel negative ones.
control and value matter most. 3,
Classroom and family climate have a huge influence on those control value appraisals and thus emotions.
environment is key. 4,
The impact of emotions on learning is nuanced. Positive isn't always good. Merely relief might lead to stopping effort. Negative isn't always bad. For example, anxiety might motivate studying up to a point. It depends on the type of emotion and its intensity.
nuanced effects. And 5,
Students aren't just passive recipients. They use various strategies to regulate their emotions, and these can be learned and supported.
so understanding variability, the role of control value, climate, nuanced effects, and regulation, That gives teachers a framework.
Exactly. A much richer understanding than just labeling kids as anxious or motivated.
And this understanding leads to ideas for changing emotions, promoting positive, reducing the negative.
Yes, CVT points directly to strategies. Improve instruction quality. Make things clear. Calibrate task difficulty. Deliberately provoke curiosity.
Better teaching helps. What else?
Enhance the emotional and motivational quality. Convey the value of learning. Show enthusiasm. Foster relatedness. Promote a mastery goal climate, not just competition. Provide autonomy support.
So making the classroom a more supportive, engaging place.
Right. Give informational feedback that helps students understand errors and improve rather than just grades. Foster an error culture where mistakes aren't feared. Think carefully about group composition and its potential effects.
And bigger picture things matter too, like assessment policies.
Definitely. High-stakes testing environments can undermine mastery goals and increase anxiety, working against some of these positive strategies. Educational policy plays a role, and researchers are developing specific control value interventions based on these principles.
So the theory seems quite practical. The article wraps up by looking at strengths, open questions, future directions. What are the main strengths?
It lists several. Its broad scope, covering many emotions and contexts. Its relative parsimony, using control and value as core unifying concepts. Its comprehensiveness, addressing antecedents, effects, regulation. Its ability to unify or connect with other major theories. Expectancy value, attribution, Lazarus's appraisal model, motivation theories.
And it's testable, has empirical support, and it's practical.
Yes, those are seen as key strengths that have contributed to its influence.
But it's not perfect. What are the open questions or areas for future work?
Well, continuing to test how well CVT generalizes to other emotion types beyond those already studied, digging deeper into sociocultural influences, how do context and culture shape control value appraisals and emotional expression in more detail.
More on culture. What else?
Further clarifying that relative universality idea, what exactly is universal and how do parameters vary? Methodologically, there's a need for research with larger, more diverse representative samples. Using multi-channel measures of emotion, not just self-report, but maybe physiological or behavioral measures too.
Getting beyond questionnaires.
Right. And employing stronger causal designs experiments, better longitudinal studies to really nail down the cause and effect relationships. More with in-person analyses to understand individual fluctuations, studying diverse age groups from early childhood to adulthood, looking at different settings, especially newer ones like digital learning environments.
Online learning emotions, yeah.
And doing more research across different cultural contexts to really understand universality and specificity. And of course, developing and rigorously testing more interventions based on CVT principles.
So lots still to explore. It's a dynamic field.
Absolutely. CVT provides a powerful framework, but it's still evolving as research continues.
Okay, so to wrap this up for everyone listening, the big takeaway from this deep dive into control value theory is that it gives us this really useful lens focusing on our sense of control and what we value to understand where our emotions come from and what they do.
Yeah, it really drives home that feelings aren't just random things that happen to us. They're deeply tied to how we interpret our experiences, our capabilities, and the importance of things, especially in learning environments.
And while we talked a lot about education, because that's where the theory was born and tested most, remember those core ideas, control and value. They're relevant everywhere. Social situations, work challenges, personal goals.
Definitely. It offers a way to think about emotional experiences much more broadly.
So here's a final thought for you to chew on. Reflect on your own experiences using this control value lens. Think about a time you felt really engaged and enjoyed learning something difficult, or maybe a time you felt overwhelming anxiety about a task.
Ask yourself, what was my sense of control like in that moment? How much did I value the process or the outcome? How did those two things seem to connect to the emotion I felt?
What little aha moments did digging into control and value spark about your own emotional world? We hope this deep dive gave you some valuable insights and maybe a new way to understand those feelings we all navigate every day.
Thanks for joining us for this exploration of control value theory.